After what happened right in front of his eyes, Sei was in shock and didn't know how to react. He looked down at his body, still stunned by the event, until he was jolted back to his senses by an ear-piercing scream from his mother, who was desperately calling his name and begging him to inform the others. Though still dazed, Sei ran as fast as he could at his mother's command. As he ran, his mind was spinning, questioning his mother's strange reaction to the situation. When he arrived to tell his family, his father inquired about the scream they'd heard. But Sei, still in shock, struggled to explain. He managed to say only that his cousin Shaig had fallen off a cliff. Upon hearing this, Shaig's mother ran to save her son. The entire family raced to the spot where Sei's mother had pushed Shaig over the edge. When they arrived, Sei's mother was still there, staring over the cliff in shock. She turned to Sei with a dazed expression, and his aunt rushed to her asking about her son. Sei remained frozen, watching as his aunt questioned his mother, who claimed that Shaige had been fooling around and lost his balance, insisting she couldn't save him in time. To Sei, her explanation sounded hollow, like someone caught lying. His aunt, hoping against hope, rushed to the cliff's edge, screaming Shaige's name. Another family member spotted Shaig below, prompting his aunt to rush down to help, leaving Sei's family standing alone on the cliff. Sei, still frozen in shock, watched as his father tried to comfort his mother, assuring her that Shaig would be okay. His father then turned to Sei, saying he was going down to help, and asked Sei to stay with his mother. Sei and his mother stood in silence. He watched her, waiting for her to say something. Finally, he moved closer and heard her muttering to herself. As he called her Mom, she seemed to realize his presence, turning toward him with a strange smile. She told him to hold her tightly, hugging him. While holding her, Sei's mind raced, recalling memories and wondering why she'd pushed Shaig and what this meant for their family. He was lost in thought when she finally released him, telling him they had to go. Sei, still dazed, asked where she was going, to which she replied that she had to look for Shaig. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Sei followed her, starting to suspect that this wasn't the mother he knew. When they arrived at Shaiji's side, Sei was shocked by his cousin's condition. Shaiji's leg was almost broken, and he seemed close to losing consciousness. Sei's mother was trying to wake him, then explained to Shigeru that others had gone to get help. She comforted Shaige, telling him he would soon be able to play with Sei again. She asked Sei to talk to Shaigi to keep him awake. Fighting back tears, Sei tried to say his cousin's name while his mother looked on, her expression unreadable. Sei's aunt was still trying to talk to her son when Sei's mother suddenly asked Shaig, "Does it hurt?" with a cold, unsympathetic look. Sei was horrified. He could see the true meaning behind her words. Luckily, help soon arrived. His uncle and rescue officers began tending to Shaig, and Sei's father reassured him that a helicopter would arrive soon. At the hospital, everyone waited anxiously for news. When the doctor finally arrived, he announced that the surgery had been successful, and Shaig was out of immediate danger. In the doctor's office, the family expressed their gratitude. The doctor explained that Shaig had sustained serious brain injuries before surgery and had now slipped into a coma. Everyone was shocked, and Sei's mind struggled to process it, feeling as if his brain was blanketed in confusion. In shock after hearing about his cousin's condition, he remembers the bright smile of his cousin calling his name. Here, the doctor explains the possibility that Shigeru may never regain full consciousness and, in a coma, he won't be able to respond to them. Sei, looking at his mother's serious face, continues listening to the doctor's words, who claims that even if Shigeru does recover, some degree of impairment is likely. This may include difficulties with speech, paralysis, and memory loss after recovery. Upon hearing the news, everyone is tense. His parents are crying, and Sei stares at the ground, frozen and lost in his own world. Even in the manga panel, his condition is shown by depicting his body as completely dark, covered with a sense of tension and confusion. He can't hold back any longer, and collapses to his knees. Sei's father, concerned, asks what happened to him. Sei, still breathing heavily, feels his mother's comforting hand on his shoulder as she asks if he's okay and if he needs to rest, her face filled with worry. Sei looks at his mother's face when they hear someone approaching. It's the police officers who have come to investigate the incident and ask them a few questions. The atmosphere turns silent. The officer asks Sei who was present at the scene when the incident happened. Sei tries to respond, but his mother answers first, saying that she and her son were there when it happened. The officer then asks Sei's mother to explain what occurred in detail. She begins by explaining that they were on a family trip, having lunch together when Sei and Shigeru went to the restroom but didn't return, so she went to look for them. She found them by the cliff. Shiga was standing at the edge, and Seiichi was further back. She told Shige he shouldn't stand so close to the edge, but he refused and began fooling around. Then, he lost his balance. She tried to catch him, but Sei looked to his mother as she continued her act, apologizing and saying she was too late. His aunt, still crying, believed her explanation, but to be sure the officer asked Seiichi, "Is what she said accurate?" I hoped Sei would be honest and tell the officer the truth, but when his mother placed her hand on his shoulder, he felt a psychological pressure. The officer asked again, as Sei didn't respond, lost in thought and overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. His mother's face was unreadable, darkened with something he couldn't place. She removed her hand, gave him a reassuring smile, and the officer repeated, "Is what your mother said accurate?" With her eyes on him, Sei nodded, affirming that it was just as his mother had described. His reaction clearly indicated that he was aligning with her version of events. Even his mother seemed slightly surprised. The investigation continued with other family members, while Sei occasionally glanced at his mother, noticing her distant expression. She seemed lost in her own thoughts, giving off an unsettling, almost imposter-like vibe. When the officers finally left, Sei and his parents headed home. As he sat in the car, he saw his mother still apologizing for her actions, but his aunt reassured her, saying it wasn't her fault, it was hers. On the way home, the car was silent. Both mother and son couldn't speak to each other due to the weight of the incident. They finally arrived home, and the three of them sat in the living room without conversation. To break the awkwardness, Sei's father asked if anyone was hungry. Leaving the task of preparing dinner to his wife, he stepped outside for a smoke, leaving Sei and his mother alone. Now alone in the living room, mother and son sat in silence for a moment until his mother finally called his name and asked what he wanted for dinner. Sei, still in shock, looked at his mother. They held each other's gaze for a long moment before he replied, saying he wanted pork for the meal. In another scene, we see Sei thinking about his cousin, visualizing him as the dead cat they had once found lying on the street. He had asked his mother, "Why is it dead? Why, Mommy? Why?" His mother had looked at him with a smile, her expression changing in a way that unsettled him. Suddenly, her face took on a distorted look, and in a haunting voice she asked, "Sei, will you forgive Mommy?" And then, nah. It was all just a dream.
After the night passed, Sei sat up in his bed, a troubled expression on his face. He climbed down the ladder and made his way to the main room, where his father was getting ready for work. He greeted his dad with a soft, "Good morning." Moments later, his mother arrived, asking him about his breakfast preference. Sei answered with a simple nod. Then his father brought up the plan to visit Sei's cousin, Shig, in the hospital after breakfast. To their surprise, Sei declined. Both his parents were stunned when he firmly said, "I don't want to go." Understanding the tension, his father reassured him that they would visit Shig on their own. As his parents prepared to leave, his mother informed him they'd be back by evening. But before walking out the door, she turned to him and said, "See you later." Her voice carrying an unsettling undertone that Sei couldn't shake. Left alone, Sei returned to his room. Lying on his bed, he stared at his trembling hands. Frustration and anguish bubbled up inside, and he covered his face with his hands before finally letting out a gut-wrenching scream, as if trying to expel all his inner turmoil. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, tears still dropping down his eyes, realizing someone was at the door. He went downstairs, calling out, "Coming!" as he approached the door. When he opened it, there she was, a nervous, shy girl waiting awkwardly on the other side. It was Fukashi, the same girl from the earlier part of the story. And with that, this part ends. Well, we all know what's going on with her. Like I mentioned before, she's clearly interested in our MC. And considering the genre of this manga, we can already guess what might happen next.